Welcome everyone to Legion Gaming. I'm your host, Donnie, and as always, I'm joined by co-host, Ducey.
Now, Don, you do plan on having dinosaurs in this dinosaur podcast?
We're going to have a whole lot of dinosaurs, Ducey. And this won't be something of asking ourselves, should we do it? We're definitely going to do it. And if you can't get the hints, our friends out there, today is a very fun episode because we're comparing the Genesis and Super Nintendo versions of Jurassic Park, which is a fun topic that Ducey recommended. And I thought it was a very fun idea because they're two drastically different games. And we'll have a lot to talk about. We both grew up with different versions. So this is going to be a great episode, I think.
We could have even done all of the versions because every single one of them is different.
That's true.
Some way. It's so weird how this series did that for back then.
And they're all drastically different, too, for the most part.
I think this kind of spawned from... I wanted to get the Jurassic Park collection that came out recently, and I thought, you know what? Let's spin this into an episode too.
Yeah, it's a really great idea because we have some other fun, exciting things coming down the pipeline as well. But this one, as soon as you mentioned, I was like, yeah, I freaking love this idea. Because way back, like episode 14 or something, I need to start remembering our numbers here.
Yeah.
But we compared the Aladdin games on Super Nintendo Genesis, and that was a really great episode then too, because we were kind of, for the most part, like anyone else, we were mostly split. We could really just say, both games are great. You're not going to go wrong. But I think Jurassic Park is a little bit different, both from how both were at the time, and especially more how they've aged, which... There's one I'll say definitely not age as well as the other, so we'll have a lot of fun talking about that one.
Yeah, it's funny. For the Aladdin one, it was really just a matter of what you grew up with.
For the most part, yeah.
And for this one, it's like there might be a clear winner. I wasn't planning on doing a fighting comparison of them, but it kind of turned that way in my head when I started replaying both of them.
Because it'll be more of like, which one do we prefer out of the two? Because that's really ultimately what we'll end up talking about, right? Is we'll talk about what they felt like at the time, because we definitely have memories of those, and also we grew up with each version respectively. But in addition to that, how they held up today, even with the enhancements of the Jurassic Park collection or not. There's a lot of interesting comparisons between the two, and there's one big difference that makes one version of the game infinitely more playable than it was 31 years ago.
Yeah, thank you, collection.
Yeah, really. So I'm excited for this episode. I think it'll be a really fun topic. This also, Jurassic Park is one of the most iconic movies, or more iconic movies in film history. So I have a lot of fun for that. And franchises now, yeah.
Like, I was going to say, the reason we each grew up with a different version is because... How could we not have something Jurassic Park in our libraries?
It's everywhere. Yeah, exactly. And granted, like it was a little later, but our friend Mike sent us that video of the watches, the Lost World watches from Burger King.
Oh, no, I think I just sent a picture of it, right? Or something
Oh,
like that.
Did you just send a picture? Okay, because I'd watched the commercial for it too, but I had forgotten all about those.
Yeah.
I was like, dang, those things were badass back then. But yeah, much like anything else, the success of Jurassic Park led to, tie-ins with everything. McDonald's, toys, watches... So needless to say, this franchise is still persisting today with a lot more sequels that are nowhere near as good. Yeah. But nonetheless, it exists and it's still making tons of money.
At this point, it's just sort of a fun popcorn franchise. And it actually touches on how you would deal with dinosaurs in the real world. Like, businesses took over and turned them into a money thing.
Oh, of course, yeah. That's kind of how it was with the first movie, too. But we'll get on to all front of that, too, because there's a lot to say about Jurassic Park. But... Before that, Ducey, what have you been playing recently?
Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I figured that was on there, and that's also on my little list there,
I've been playing Jurassic Park. I've been playing Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. It's 1993 all over again.
I've really been just sticking with kind of what we talked about last week. Still doing the NES Championship thing. Whenever I can, I just pick it up, like when the World Championship part recycles on a Monday. Mm-hmm. I look at my stats, and then I play the next 5 that they put out, and I also just play random little practice runs when I've been watching a lot of the Olympics since that's been on, and just playing that off to the side. It's kind of apropos, I guess you could say, because there's a bunch of world-class athletes running for the best time on your TV screen, and here I am running Mario across the screen.
All from your couch, the comfort of your own couch. Yeah, it's perfect.
And then I also have been just playing a ton of Call of Duty, which I have to tear myself away from because I want to get back into Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, you were was it Act 2 when
Yeah.
last left off? Yeah, so you're still basically like, a third through the game. You got another 2/3 left, more or less.
And then I while I was doing Act 2 of that, I accidentally ran into, I guess, what is DLC. Because like I beat this story. There was this like person like that was controlling a lot of other enemies, and if I didn't kill the person that was controlling them, they would just keep coming back and coming back. And then I beat that, and there was like saying, okay, go see the boatman and you'll go to a completely different map. And I was like, hold on, I still have like 2 more acts of this thing to get through. But then I got sidetracked with Modern Warfare 3 being free, and I know Black Ops 6 is coming soon, which I wanted to get even if it wasn't going to be on Game Pass, because I just like the Black Ops stories and everything.
I agree. It's a lot more interesting than the sort of Middle East modern conflict that they have. Yeah.
But I did try in this one the zombies mode, and I really like it. It's kind of a weird combination of what Black Ops did with their open world zombies, and then what Modern Warfare 2 did with, what was it called, DMZ or something like that?
DMZ. Yeah. That's how I felt. It was like a crossover of zombies and Warzone in a way.
Yeah. And it's a little more difficult than what Black Ops did. That one I was getting really good at, and I was just like mastering the levels because of how long I would be able to stay into the rounds. I even, in that one, I got pretty far into the story of the zombies and got to like sort of what they considered a final boss. In this one, I don't know if I will ever get to that, because they really based it on like, you should be playing with a squad.
Yeah, I noticed that too when I played it last year. It ramped up very quickly, the difficulty. Yeah, and granted, I didn't know the flow of the game either, because you have to understand that in order to even progress. But it seemed like it was definitely more squad oriented more than anything else.
This one, I'd be like popping a couple here and there, and then I would turn around and there's just this horde coming after me, and I'm like, oh, when did that happen?
Yeah.
I better lay down a mine or something and just run.
Yeah.
I did have this thrilling exfil the other day where I got onto the helicopter while the horde was trying to get into the helicopter. And then behind me, like a hellhound came in through the side door, and I was just like, please leave me alone. I'm trying to fly away here.
That would be great if like the hellhound actually killed you while you were lifting off. Like you just had that much health left.
Can I just take him with me and he's a pet now?
Yeah, I've been playing Call of Duty for I mean, this is the most I've played Call of Duty in a while, especially because usually it's like I mentioned in the last episode, I usually, play only Warzone, and that depends on how often our friends can get on. And then multiplayer, like this is the most I've played since I got it. Like I played this a little bit when I got Modern Warfare 3, and then no one else had bought it, and then we all jumped in now with Randy. So it's obviously I have a lot more fun with Call of Duty when I'm playing with friends. It's not like Street Fighter 6, obviously, beyond the fact that it's just one-on-one or any fighting game. I'll sit there for hours just playing match after match after match. Call of Duty, I get to a point where I'm like, all right, I'm kind of done solo. Like this really hinges on how many friends I have.
Yeah.
So it's been really fun to play with everyone on that. I also got back into Diablo 4, which you and I played with our friend Matt. I guess it must have been like 9 months ago now. It's been a while.
I was going to say, it was earlier this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always had a good time with it. Like I enjoyed the campaign when it came out. The seasons is where I was struggling to enjoy, because I don't know what it was at the time or what they did, but it just had no hook for you. Like it was just kind of redundant. It wasn't very fun to me. Like the loot wasn't worth it. And now they're up to, I think it's season 5 that just launched, if I recall. I think it was season 5. So I figured I'd jump in because I've heard how good it's gotten since then. And I've only played like, I don't know, I just started yesterday. I ended up playing like 3 or 4 hours because I expected to just play like a little bit, like do a dungeon, check it out. But whatever they've done and tweaked, it's done wonders, because I've increased the difficulty to World Tier 2 now, so now everything's a little bit more difficult. But it's because the character I'm using, I'm playing a sorcerer's build now this round. And there's just a lot more enemies, a lot more chaos. Like now there's, they call them Helltide events, where it's like a certain segment of the map is being invaded by demons and, hell spawns, wherever else. And you clear them out and you get a certain currency, which allows you to open up these, I think they're called torture gates or something like that. And that's when you get like all the really good loot. And then beyond that, the whole hook of the season is that there's these collectibles called Mother's Gifts that come up from like bosses and lead enemies. So in the midst of you just, doing dungeons and all the events that are live, you're collecting this other currency that allows you to level up this other progression chart where you get tons of loot, tons of XP. And like one of the first loot packages I got had like a unique piece of gear in there. It had tons of legendary. So I'm just like casting spells out the ass. There are like floods of hellspawn coming at me. Like, you know me, I love those really heavy action driven games where it's just like there's utter chaos, like you're parrying stuff or you're casting spells. It's gotten to that point now in Diablo. So at least for the time being, like I started level 1 last night, up to like level 24 now on my character.
Damn.
So I've been enjoying it nonetheless. And
Yeah.
our friend Matt just got back into it too. So hopefully we can con you in and we'll get some co-op in there because, again, like you haven't gone through the campaign yet.
No.
Because unfortunately, like the seasonal stuff, you have to finish the main game or skip it if you want to access it. So it's like for you, you have to play on one of our hosted games, which is fine. But it's really fun. Like I'd imagine the chaos is ramped up on co-op. I don't know. I'm sure it felt pretty chaotic when we played back when I think it was your main story campaign. Or were we playing on yours? Or
It
Matt's?
wasn't mine. I was on somebody else's that something had already happened. But I was experiencing the story sort of from the beginning. But I don't think it was mine being
It must
hosted.
have been Matt's because I had beaten it way before you guys.
Yeah.
And I would skip the campaign so I could do the seasonal stuff. So I guess that had to have been Matt's or something. But it's a good time. I think for me, there's times where you get an itch to play a certain type of game, a certain genre, and sometimes I just really feel like playing an ARPG like this, where it's just that sort of isometric tilted view, and just you have spells, you have a hot bar of mana and your abilities, and you dispense them.
I want that again, but with like characters I know. I want another Marvel like Ultimate Alliance.
I really
or
wish
something.
they would do that. It's funny you mentioned that because I was actually considering downloading that again because I was fortunate enough to get it on PS4 before they delisted it.
Oh yeah,
and get same thing. Like you just get that sort of feeling to play it. And as much as I enjoyed Ultimate Alliance 3, there's certain aspects that just annoy me because it feels a little too grindy, right? Versus just playing the game to experience the kind of thing, which is why I enjoyed Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2 is because I can get in there and it's just cut and dry RPG, ARPG goodness,
Yeah, I was actually thinking about playing it again too because we watched Deadpool and Wolverine recently, and for some reason that like triggered me wanting to do Marvel team ups again. And then I had thought about like the characters that were in that movie. I don't know if we want to give away spoilers. I'm sure the internet has given away plenty,
there's
but
plenty of spoilers online. Yeah,
all of those forgotten characters that came back for this movie was just a wild, eclectic bunch, and it was exactly like the weird bunch you could make in Ultimate Alliance.
You would pick and choose whoever the hell you wanted on your crazy team that would never exist in a movie.
Yeah, until now they finally did.
Yeah, so it's I don't know. I doubt we'll ever get like because those Marvel Ultimate Alliance ports, I think, were sort of remasters. I don't know if they label them as such, but they were kind of like upgraded ports of the 360 and PS3 ones. I don't know if we'll ever get those remastered again. I wish they would. Or I wish they would just make a new Ultimate Alliance game that isn't as much what Ultimate Alliance 3 was, as much as I enjoyed that. Like just get back to more basic stuff, or hell, just rip off Diablo 4. It seems to be fine. Or Last Epic, I was talking about that game a while back. Just rip those off and put Marvel characters or something. That's all I really need, So yeah, there's a lot.
I guess if I do want a new Marvel team up, I can finally start playing Midnight Suns.
Oh, you got to, because I convinced Rain to do that, and he was completely immersed in that game. I think he had to have put in over 100 hours in or something in that, which is even more than I have because I beat it, and he just must have just grinded away and did everything imaginable in there. But yeah, I've been telling you have to play that game. It's so freaking fun. Unfortunately, not co-op, but it'll scratch a certain itch for you for sure.
Yeah, I think it's free on PlayStation.
Yeah, it's on PS Plus currently. Yeah. If I didn't, if the game wasn't so long, like I would really consider playing through it again because it's a solid 55. Like I put 55 hours in the main story.
Wow.
And that's with doing a lot of side stuff and everything else. But it's a pretty beefy game, and I enjoyed like every moment of that game. It was really good. I wish more people enjoyed it.
Yeah.
All right, Ducey. Well, I guess with that, we'll head into Jurassic Park. We're here in Jurassic Park. Listeners may or may not be able to listen to all the birds in the background. Maybe you can't, but that's part of the ambience that we've decided here.
Yeah, we've actually decided to record on location in the jungles.
In the jungles. Yeah, exactly. It's very jungly in here, you can tell. I can feel the humidity, but not. Yeah. Anyways, Jurassic Park, Ducey. This came out June 11th, 1993. Can you believe this movie is 31 years old now?
Weirdly, yes.
It does feel that way, but I mean, when this movie came out, it was like the biggest movie. It felt like, for me, probably the first modern blockbuster of my time, as far as just like how much weight was behind this movie and how much hype was around it.
It was the Jaws of our generation.
I'd say that's fair. Ironically, also
by Steven
Spielberg. Yeah. So the story of this movie is that it's based on a trilogy of novels by Michael Crichton. It follows the story of a wealthy businessman who decides that he wants to create a wildlife park full of dinosaurs who were extinct.
There wasn't a trilogy.
The books?
No, there was only 2.
Oh, the movies. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the movies.
Yeah, I'm talking about the movies. I'm sorry. I meant the trilogy of movies that were based on the books.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I kind of crossed my wire there. Yes, a very rich person decides that dinosaurs should exist and decides to make a wildlife park, which, of course, you already know would never go well.
Yeah.
And early on, when they were trying to secure the rights for this, James Cameron was in contention for the rights to make this movie. And apparently he was just within hours of Steven Spielberg snatching it right from him. So that would be kind of cool. I think about James Cameron, who, made Terminator 2, Aliens.
It would have been a lot darker tone.
I think it would have been a lot darker movie because, Jurassic Park, it's weird. It's like a sci-fi action movie, but it's not like a dark movie. Also, it doesn't feel that way. It almost feels like a lighthearted one.
It's like an adventure too, like Indiana Jones sort of.
Yeah.
I'm sure Cameron would have made it a lot more like the books. The books were bloody. They were very graphic in when a human got eaten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be James Cameron's bread and butter right there. I would say so, yeah. And John Williams composed the score for this movie, so there's a lot of great big names attached to this movie. And this movie featured a combination of animatronic dinosaurs designed by Stan Winston, who was probably the most known set prop maker of all time in the movies. Like, he's done everything from Aliens, The Thing, Terminator, Predator, any 70, 80, 90s puppet thing or monster, whatever, probably had Stan Winston's hands on it in some way.
Yeah, for sure.
So they tried to make all the dinosaurs using animatronics, but it ended up looking really goofy and it was really heavy and like they just weren't working or didn't look really realistic. And it wasn't until ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, there's a couple of CGRs there. There was Mark, I think his last name is Dippy or Dip, and Steve Williams. They developed a CG walk cycle of the T-Rex, and once Spielberg saw this, it blew him away, and that's what convinced him that they need to do CG for all the dinosaurs in here.
It was also like on the down low.
It was
because
like he did on his own, like in his own time, to make a case for it.
Because they were like really fighting against it. They were saying like, "Oh, look, computers can't do what we're doing here with these puppets and everything."
Yeah,
even though T2 was already out, like you knew.
Yeah, T2 was 2 years previous to this. Yeah, and it looked amazing. It did the same thing. It had a combination of real life animatronics or puppets and CG, and it did an amazing job with it. And I think that's what makes these movies age so well is that they don't lean too heavily on one or the other. Like they're really tactful on what they're using for what scene or what set, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like everything's CG, and to be honest, a lot of the movies today don't look as good as some of the old movies, like specifically Jurassic Park and Terminator 2.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, like this was a huge deal at the time. It was one of the landmark CG movies. Paleontologists were brought in to consult the look and how dinosaurs move, which is pretty incredible that they went to that level of detail to make sure that this was a convincing movie. And it was successful. Like when you see the T-Rex behind the Jeep, it looks like it's a real freaking T-Rex. Even though it's dark, rainy, whatever, there was nothing I'd seen like this as a kid in my life. It looked incredible.
Big props to the sound effects too, because just something as much as a footstep, like
that's all it needed.
Really made you feel like it was there and it was real and weighty.
Yeah, exactly. Like the sound design and the visual of this movie, it's incredible. It ages very well. It's still watchable. Like I haven't seen it in a while. I'm probably due for a rewatch. But it looks like it could be released today. That's how great this movie ended up looking, and its legacy that's still lasting to these days.
It was one of those movies where if you found it on a regular network channel with commercials, you didn't care. You'd
wherever it started, you finish it. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. It's one of those movies. And this movie became one of the highest grossing films worldwide. It actually took the record from E.T. It grossed $50 million in its first weekend, which I think is really funny because I noted here, like, that's considered a failure these days. Like, what was it? The Furiosa. I think that made like 35 or 40 million, which is, pretty respectable its first weekend. And they basically consider it just a flop at that point, which is really insane to me because it's a great movie.
Because all that they consider now is you need like the billions that Deadpool made.
Well, you need like Disney, MCU, Star Wars money in order to be a success,
Yeah.
which is awful. Like you can't compare that.
But like you were also just telling me, like movies like Borderlands just came out, and I know the reviews are bad, but like it's also not planning on being out in theaters that long. And it's like, how do you expect these movies to make money if you just immediately put them on the streaming and people know that?
And that's what happens is usually like a lot of studios now, especially with the pandemic, right? Because that changed everything. Like it changed theaters and digital distribution and everything. But now they can turn around movies so quick that they'll monitor the first few weeks of a box office and say, well, it's not doing well. I guess we'll just release it because, back in the day, like if a movie didn't do well in the theaters, it took a while for it to get on VHS. Like I remember I couldn't see Jurassic Park in theaters because my parents hated going to the theater.
Yeah.
So I didn't see, movies that took like 6 months to a year to come out on VHS. So we were waiting like every week trying to get a release date for this thing for it to come out. But if a movie wasn't successful in theaters, they always had like the rental or DVD market to, recoup some of the costs. Now studios are like, well, it's a failure the first week according to our metrics that we've made up. Release it. We'll make money off, digital and whatever else.
It must have come out at a certain time while we had just started third grade, because I remember while we were in third grade, that was the biggest time for it. Everybody in class was talking about it. I remember that's when I got the toys for Christmas.
Everywhere.
And I don't think I had gotten toys or games about it until I'd seen it, but I know we didn't see it in theaters.
Well, yeah, because it came out June 93, so we probably would have started like September, August 93 for third grade. And yeah, it would have been right into the holiday season. And this movie was obviously a giant success right out the gate. It ended up making like $357 million after it was all said and done off a $63 million budget, which really huge for the early 90s. That's a lot of money, and that's what computer-generated imagery cost back then. It was just very expensive. It's still expensive today. And of course, it set like every record imaginable at the time. Like it broke everything. This movie was, like when we say it was everywhere, like every commercial had to have some Jurassic Park thing. There was tons of McDonald's for the food. Like I remember seeing the the fry boxes with dinosaurs on them and stuff. There was Tiger Electronic games. And of course, movie licenses back then wouldn't be the same if they didn't have games attached to them.
Yep.
So there was quite a few Jurassic Park games that were released. It released on the Game Boy, the Game Gear, NES, Super Nintendo, and Genesis. That's basically every major console in 1993.
Was there like a Sega Saturn or Sega CD version?
Sega CD, yes, you're right. I forgot about that.
That's
one.
what I thought.
Yeah, that one was more of like a point-and-click adventure kind of game, more informational, which was funny.
Yeah.
So there we go. There's like 6 systems this was released for, right? And they're all drastically different experiences. I'd say, I think you said the Game Boy one and NES one are similar, right?
Yeah, those are the only two that are pretty close to each other. Almost like step for step on the map and everything.
And for me, I always championed the Game Gear version because I don't know if Vito had it. I don't know who had it back then, but I remember playing it in some way. And I hadn't played it for like literally decades, and I started hearing how good it was. And I revisited it. I was like, wow, this is actually a pretty bad side-scrolling game. Like there's segments where you're driving in the Jeep. There's like a light gun segment, as much as you can say that for Game Gear, right? But the two versions we're talking about today are probably the most known ones because these were the two most popular consoles at the time, and that's Jurassic Park, Super Nintendo, and Jurassic Park on the Sega Genesis. So both these games, drastically different, do you see? We both grew up with different versions of this, and I think we'll have a lot of fun talking about these. So what we'll do is I guess we'll kind of go through some of the development here and some of the reviews, and we'll share what we thought of both games because there's quite a bit to sort of pick off the bone here, so to speak.
Yeah. First of all, I do remember playing the Nintendo one first.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I don't know if I didn't have a Super Nintendo yet, but I do remember renting Jurassic Park. It was probably one of the earliest ones after I got Turtles 3. I might have also seen Jurassic Park around, and that I do remember, though. I talked about it in our Worst Enemies episode. I didn't get past level 2.
Yeah.
Maybe I found a code somewhere for a level skip, but I did see it in Nintendo Power, so I at least knew what the future levels looked like. I just couldn't get past that darn T-Rex. As for the Super Nintendo version, I think I rented it also, but it was pretty soon afterwards that I wanted to get it, so I asked for it for like Christmas. I didn't ask for the Nintendo one because I knew I was never going to beat that one.
Yeah.
But the Super Nintendo one was fun as hell.
Yeah, I think this is a really great version after it's all said and done, especially in modern times with the Jurassic Park collection.
Yeah.
But both these games were developed by two different companies, and they really were, it's interesting, like they were released around the same time within a few months of each other. So they had like parallel development, but they had nothing to do with each other. So the Super Nintendo one, we'll kind of go through this one here first. So this one came out in October 1993. It was published and developed by Ocean Software. They were, a huge licensed developer back then. They did a lot of movie tie-ins like Batman, Addams Family. They did Flintstones games, Lethal Weapon, RoboCop, and versus Terminator games.
I always wanted to play that Eek the Cat.
Me too. I never got to see that anywhere because I used to like the show, and I think it has one of the most badass themes for any kid show. Really, it's pretty metal. But yeah, I never saw that one around either. So Ocean was notable for a lot of games back then. Hit or miss. Not all of them were successes. Not all of them were great games.
I do remember seeing their logo on a lot of stuff.
Me too.
I also remember them being better than LJN at least.
They were. That's the thing is like they, when you play an Ocean game, like you know what you're going to get most of the time, but it was at least fun and playable. It wasn't just awful.
Yeah.
It's a different story. And Ocean, I didn't really know this until I was reading up on it, but they were later purchased and rebranded as Infogrames. And I only recognize them because later in like the PS2 and 64 era, they were doing games then. But they had done games like Fire's Destiny, GT64, which back then I thought was like the Gran Turismo equivalent because GT64, it was not. And Wet Tricks and Mission Impossible, which is another N64 game that we both enjoyed back then.
That was a fun one. I could have sworn, no, maybe not. Did they do the Mission Impossible for Nintendo?
I don't think so. I didn't see it on their list.
Okay.
Oh, I should look it up because I only saw some highlights on there. Maybe they did do Mission Impossible on there.
Because
that'd be interesting.
I mean, the one for Nintendo was based on the old TV show, but still, it'd be kind of funny if they had that license continuing.
That would be funny. The NES and N64 version under different names. Infogrames and Ocean. Yeah. So with Jurassic Park being like the biggest movie of 1993, it was obviously a very expensive commodity to get the license for. So Ocean paid a six-figure sum. They don't know what it is, but you're looking, obviously a minimum of $100,000 to get the NES game. And they dedicated more developers to this project than any other project they'd done previously. So they really wanted to make a big effort to make this game great. And this game was originally planned for an August 1993 release, but they delayed it because they had shown a demo at the Chicago CES show at the time. And it was pretty, a lot of people didn't think it was going to be very good because the graphics were awful. And I guess it just had a lot of issues. And that luckily afforded them time to get the game delayed.
Man, I want to see what that early edition looked like because the overworld of this one, when you're outside, it looks very similar to the Nintendo one, only like obviously way different.
Higher
because
fidelity and
8-bit, 16-bit. Yeah. But yeah, I wonder what it looked like before.
Yeah. That's what I'm curious too. I'm curious if there's any beta shots or maybe there's some like guerrilla video of CES in 1993 or something. Yeah. So the team, when they're developing this, they had access to film stills and storyboards, and they were able to use those to kind of adapt into the game. And I think it worked. It obviously paid off because this game looks fantastic.
You can tell though that they didn't know what the movie was going to do yet.
Oh, definitely.
Because a lot of the stuff you do in this is based on the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Ocean also claimed that this was the first game to use high-resolution backdrops, which I don't know what that means in terms of 1993,
Wasn't Mortal Kombat already a thing?
Well, it's hard to say because, like, what do you define as high-definition backdrops, right? Because Mortal Kombat, like, looks like it's higher res because it's digitized video.
And also, the way the camera angle is, you barely see the trees and things in this game.
Yeah.
You're looking at the ground a lot.
It's really weird. So I thought that was an interesting factor that they were trying to flex around there. One thing it did achieve, though, that was really kind of remarkable was that they were doing the indoor 3D areas without a Super FX chip. That was all hardware, or the SNES hardware.
Oh, wow.
Right? So that, it's clunky, but in 1993, it's really something that wasn't around. Like maybe, I don't know if Wolfenstein 3 had come out before this. I don't think the Doom port had come out for Super Nintendo yet.
I think it's
actually no, it couldn't have because Doom was 93 December. Yeah.
Oh, the computer.
Yeah, the computer version.
Wow.
So this was pre-Doom Super Nintendo and maybe pre-Wolfenstein Super Nintendo.
Wow.
Without the need for super effects and everything. So
yeah.
it just makes it even more impressive that they did it to begin with.
Is it mode 7 at least?
Yeah, well, they use a lot of mode 7s. You can see kind of the scaling and warping on there.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they did, but I'm sure it has to do something with the fact that, like, you're technically turning a quarter turn at the time, and it runs at a really low frame rate, right? It's probably like 8 frames a second or something because it's trying to redraw everything as you're scrolling.
Which I never turn too quick anyway in that because I want to be precise in shooting the dinosaur in the room.
And if you turn too much, you miss, and you could die pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So it made sense. It actually worked out the way to design it. Yeah. Getting into some reviews here. GamePro in issue 53, December 1993, they gave the graphics 4.5, sound 4.5, control 4, fun factor 5. These are all out of 5. They loved the controls and graphics, especially the indoor areas. They thought the Dolby Surround was really amazing. That was something that I didn't know this game had, was Dolby Surround sound for the time.
Oh yeah, because I never had a stereo TV.
Me neither. Yeah, and so apparently it's pretty effective in the sense that like if you have surround sound, you can actually hear like the dinosaurs chirping around you, which is pretty cool.
That makes sense.
It does, yeah. So it's pretty amazing that game in 1993 on Super Nintendo had Dolby Surround support.
Yeah, because while you're in a building, sometimes you can hear the raptors or the Dilophosaurs, and you don't know exactly what room they're in. You don't know if they're in your room, or for some reason a Dilophosaur will continue spitting at you even if the doors are shut.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, I know he's nearby, but I don't know exactly where.
Yeah, exactly. Negatives from GamePro. I think these are totally valid. They thought the challenge was fine, but noted the lack of a backup saver password, which is something we'll talk about and grind about for sure.
That's basically the challenge.
That is absolutely. EGM reviewed this, issue 54, January 1994. These are out of 10. They gave it an 8, an 8, a 7, and a 6. They thought it was one of the best movie licensed games they'd seen in a while, and they loved the 3D sections. One reviewer thought the game was too easy, which I thought was utter nonsense.
Yeah, what? I mean, in the fact that like I don't die a whole lot in this game, but I just get worn out.
Yeah, exactly. There's a different sense here. I don't know about too easy is the right word to use. One didn't like how slow it was and thought the graphics were just okay, and they ultimately said they were bored, but fans of the movie might like it. Nintendo Power reviewed this as well, issue 54, November 1994, or 93, excuse me. They gave graphics a 4 out of 5, play control 2.8, challenge 3.5. Yeah, that was really low, right?
Well, this is like continues our trend of Nintendo Power hating
just
themselves.
Crapping on everything. Yeah. Theme and fun, a 4.0. They cited the impressive graphics and gameplay that incorporates the movie. They thought the interior areas have too few puzzles, and it's easy to get lost in the overworld, which I can kind of agree with that at least, because you don't have a map.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we can touch on it later when we talk about the collection, but now they've included at least the overworld map.
And that's all you really need, more than anything else.
The interiors can get a little maze-like because all the walls look the same, but it did teach me how to keep my sense of direction.
Yeah. Once you understand that, then it's not as bad. But I mean, the overall map helps more than you would expect.
Because it's almost like old-fashioned dungeon crawlers where you have to click and then like you go square by square.
Yeah.
It's almost like that. It's just a little smoother. But I really couldn't believe the play control 2.8 when I read this. Like that
seems a little low.
I can't even say that it's based on the interior parts because those are smooth, just slow. And it still all works. You turn, you shoot, you jump when you're outside.
I'd say they're perfectly competent, not amazing, but 2.8 out of 5 seems a little like, I would have gone like, I'll say 3.5 maybe, right? Again, we're nitpicking, but it's just funny like how negative Nintendo Power could be when, again, we always talk about how we thought they were so favorable to so many games. It turns out they crapped on just about everything that wasn't a major thing to them,
Nintendo Power. Now you're playing with self-loathing.
Yeah, it's like, don't buy any of our games. What are you buying our games for?
Also, the too few puzzles I don't get because, like, it does touch on the movie aspect. Like, you have to go power up the island again. You have to find the right computer and undo what Nedry did. And what more do you need?
Well, that's what I was thinking, too, is, like, I actually prefer it the way it is because this game already has a lot going on for it, and that's not saying in a bad way, right? There's just a lot to take in with this game and what you're doing already. You don't need more time in those indoor areas when they're, arguably in some sense the worst part of the game because they're so slow and whatever, right? So it's like the fact that you're just in there to complete a certain objective, very specific, that's fine.
Yeah.
We don't need anything more than that.
Do that and go.
Like, this game is lengthy on its own. Don't add more to it, So we'll shift to the Genesis version now for a little bit here. So the Genesis version was released in August 1993, and this was developed by Blue Sky Software and published by Sega. So Blue Sky, they're mostly known for Ariel the Little Mermaid on Genesis, Shadowrun, Vectorman 1 and 2, Ren and Stimpy, and Doug TenNapel, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He was the creator of Earthworm Jim. He was the lead artist on this game, which is really cool. I thought that was pretty cool that this is pre-Earthworm Jim, and he was on the team there.
I see that in some of Grant's movements while you're jumping through the jungle.
Yeah, there's definitely a tinge of Earthworm Jim's like animation style in there. Yeah. And this was the first game by Sega that was developed using the Silicon graphics computers, which were a big thing for the movie, and also some form of that would be used for Donkey Kong Country.
I was about to ask,
yeah.
wasn't that Donkey Kong?
It's a similar system, yeah. And also Activision and Acclaim were both bidding to get this license. So I would have been really curious what both of them would have come up with, because Sega, obviously outdid them and outpaid them. But it would have been interesting to see what Acclaim and Activision would have done, because I feel like they would have done a pretty awesome game.
Yeah, I was going to say back then they were two big powerhouses that were putting out some quality. Like, especially Activision back then, they had, come the PS1 era, they had, Tony Hawk and
they were
Spider-Man
doing a lot of good stuff.
Like, I'm sure the Jurassic Park would have been pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, also, who did Trespasser? I forgot. Maybe that was someone else?
It was DreamWorks Interactive.
Oh, okay. So it was a totally different developer.
It was kind of in-house.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was just thinking about that game because I was like, that seems like an Activision game, but it's not an Activision game. No. So for Jurassic Park on Genesis, this game uses a different style than the Super Nintendo one entirely. This one is more like, think of it sort of like Mortal Kombat, where it's like these sort of almost like digitized video. They filmed
Batman Forever.
Yeah, like more like Batman Forever. I guess it's closer proxy to this. But like Grant, for instance, he's one of the developers. Like they just filmed him doing climbing around animations, right? And he's in there because it's really easy to dress a person up as Grant and smudge their face because it's so small on here.
Yeah,
right?
Just get that blue like denim shirt. And,
and
a hat.
It's like, as far as I know, it could have been Sam Neill. I don't know.
Yeah,
it was fine. And also, this game's unique because you could play as a raptor, which was the coolest thing about this game at the time. And they use
that's what sold me.
That's what sold everyone. Yeah, this is a pretty interesting dynamic of playing as a human Grant or as a raptor. And for this, they used the $75,000 raptor model from the movie as to sort of like as reference point for the game. So that raptor you see that you're playing as is actually sort of a facsimile of the model that they used in the movie, which is really awesome. And also, this thing has a silly gimmick that I think was pretty silly. Artificial dinosaur intelligence. This supposedly causes the dinosaurs to react and have different AI aspects every time you play. I don't know how true this is, considering the speedruns we'll talk about way later. Mm-hmm. But I have a feeling this is more just like marking speed more than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even speedrun this, but I died so much that I replayed the same section a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of the dinosaurs were doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, I don't know what that means. It sounds like it's a lot of nonsense.
Whatever they were doing, they were attacking me.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we mentioned, this game is actually notable because it's probably the first movie tie-in game that allows you to play as an antagonist or protagonist. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if there's anything else before that, and I couldn't find anything else that said to the contrary either. And also, the ending of this game uses, I guess there was an original ending for the movie that I didn't know about, where Grant eliminates the raptors with a T-Rex skeleton in the visitor center, which is how you end the game in here.
Yeah, so when I saw this ending of the game, it's also not exactly how they planned the movie. The movie I read about, he uses the dinosaur skeleton as if it was like one of those toys where there's two levers that control the movement of the skeleton.
Like a puppet or something?
Yeah, and I was like, that sounds goofy as hell.
It does. It would have been like the Ghostbusters Statue of Liberty thing with the dinosaur. Yeah, I don't know about that one. So it probably goes in line with what you were saying, Ducey, where it's like, this was likely being developed while the movie was being produced, or at least wrapping up production or being edited. So it's like they only had so much info and probably the book, and they probably had no idea because obviously they didn't want anything to leak as far as spoilers, wherever the case was. And they just developed based on what they knew.
You know what's weird is in this one, not so much in the Super Nintendo, but also in the Nintendo versions, they put in levels based on a volcano.
Yes.
And like when you look at the map of the island, you can see there's a mountain or like a volcano, but not until Jurassic World 2 do they ever actually talk about the volcano in the movies or the books. It's weird.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised to read that too, because that was a level that they added in here that wasn't in the book or the movie or anything like that. And I was surprised that they added them, maybe because they just felt like a volcano is like a nice gaming trope to include for a theme,
They're like, yeah, it's on an island. Of course there's something that created it.
Why not? Just throw it in there. There's dinosaurs. We just go the distance, So I have a couple of reviews here, since Nintendo Power didn't obviously review the Sega Genesis game. GamePro reviewed the Jurassic Park on Genesis in issue 50, September 1993. They gave the graphics a 5, sound 4.5, control 4, fun factor 5. They thought it was one of the best movie-based games. They actually praised the variety and challenge, which I'm a little torn on that one. From the puzzles and playing as two different characters, and of course they really loved the graphics.
What puzzles? Oh, the fuel for the raft?
Yeah, it's usually stuff like that. Or like I think there's a couple with switches. Like I'm not sure. Puzzles could be such a broad term, right? It could be something as simple as like, open, unlock this switch here and go down the ladder and up here, right?
Especially for a side scroller.
Yeah. So back then things were a lot more simple compared to now, EGM reviewed this in issue 54, January 1994. They gave it 8s across the board, so that's 8888. And they loved the graphics and the ability to play as a raptor, and they thought the sounds were all they thought the sounds were all really good. They thought some parts were too challenging, but it's an excellent movie-based game. So I tend to agree with EGM in this regard. Like 1993, I probably would give this game like a solid 8. But anyway, now we're at the point, Ducey. Let's get into talking about both these games. So I guess which one should we dive into first? Should we just kind of,
I guess we could go
throw
back
them out
and
there,
forth
go back and forth. Yeah. So we'll go with the Super Nintendo one first. So this is the one that you grew up on, really. And I remember playing this at your house. I also remember buying it. And I remember a lot about this game, but I remember the most notable thing, and I think the thing that ultimately kills this game back then, lack of saves and no passwords.
Yeah.
This game is a literal marathon.
That is just wild. But somehow I did it. Somehow I finished it.
Yeah.
It definitely required a Nintendo Power or some sort of visual aid on the maps, because you have to find these 24? I forgot if we listed it here.
No, I think it was like 24 eggs.
Yeah, 24
the raptor eggs.
Raptor eggs that are spread out not only outside in the world, but also in the buildings. And then once you get all of those and go to the nest and blow up the nest of the eggs, you get the, I don't know if you'd say true ending or something. It's weird. The ending is basically like, I can't even remember if there was text, but it's, you pull away from the island in a mode 7 type thing, and you kind of circle around it and fly away. Mm-hmm. And that was it.
Yeah, because the whole premise of the game is you're really, the ultimate goal is to get to the helipad and escape, because you have to call for help and everything. This game, it's one of the most ambitious Super Nintendo games I think I've ever seen. Like, playing it now, I really appreciate more of what it was trying to do, especially for the time, because this was different than any other movie-based game that I could think of in 93. I don't think anything came close to trying to do the ambition that this had.
No, they were all side-scrollers, basically.
Yeah, so this has an isometric view. It's an over-the-top for most of the game. From what I read, there's about 256 screens you can traverse, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Like, you're basically going over in the entirety of Jurassic Park. And
surprisingly, it doesn't feel too repetitive, though, because like
there's a lot of variety in the level or in the areas. Yeah.
When I played it a lot, I could actually memorize sections and not need the Nintendo Power or anything.
I think there's enough landmarks in it, because obviously there are some repetitive parts.
Yeah.
And it's probably meant to be that way because it's meant to be like, a park that you're getting lost in, much like the movie. But really, there's a few objectives you're trying to tackle down this game before you can escape. Like, the first one has you reactivating the motion detection computer so that your little sensor works, so you can kind of detect dinosaurs in your vicinity. So when you're in the overworld, you eventually find these, buildings and everything you can go into, and that's when it shifts that first-person perspective that we were talking about earlier. It's more akin to like Doom or Wolfenstein, but I'd say it's more on the Wolfenstein side than anything else. It's super slow. Like, you have your D-pad that can move you and turn you, or you can use L and R to kind of turn.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's super slow though
for precision aiming.
Yeah, and it's got an interesting look because you're kind of like looking through a visor, which I think probably helped the frame rate, right? Because you're not using a full screen of the Super Nintendo. It just looks like you're wearing like almost like a night vision goggle thing, which you get later.
Yeah, you also don't see the gun or anything. You have to. I always used the little nose ridge.
Me too. That was my point. My
point
cursor.
of reference. Yeah.
And every time you can line that up, you're good. And within these indoor areas, it's usually there's usually a ton of dinosaurs in there. You can usually kill them from afar, which is fine.
And it's weird. Like, when you're outside, you see the little compies. They're more of a nuisance than anything. Mm-hmm. You can like zap them with the electric gun, cattle prod. There's raptors. Those are the deadliest outside. They're the quickest. The spitters. There's even some sections with the Gallimimus. Mm-hmm. They're completely harmless, but they do stampede and they could run you over.
Yeah, I hit a few of those when I was playing through that one.
There's like a couple sections where a Triceratops will come running down from the top of the screen. So if you see yourself in this weird vertical section, there's a good chance a Triceratops is coming. And then there's only 2 areas where there's a big wide open area of a T-Rex could come. And you'll hear it a long time. It's got the same roar from the movie, and then you'll hear the thud, thud, thud. But also, you better be all the way to the right of the screen, because there's no way you're outrunning this thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's And here the dinosaurs are very lethal for the most part, especially some of the bigger ones. And you have some weaponry, like you get like the bolo things. I forget what they're called. Bolo, yeah. And then you have like rockets. You have like these sort of dart things that can kill most of the dinosaurs in one hit.
Those are
like trank dart things almost.
Weirdly, those are the only things that push the T-Rex back. Mm-hmm. Like the rockets and the bolos and stuff don't do anything to it.
Yeah.
You also get shotgun shells, which sound cool, but they take a lot to take down a raptor.
Yeah, I found myself just using like the regular trank dart things. Like just a few of them would put them down. You seem to have like going out of ammo because in the indoor areas, like there's pickups, like ammo pickups and health pickups, which is good. Like I'd say that's pretty fair for the most part. They're pretty. They're not plentiful, but they're not stingy either. Like it's just enough to keep the challenge going, I think.
If you don't panic, you can take down most everything in one shot.
Yeah.
My favorite combo was always rockets and bolos.
That's what I would do.
And that's pretty much all you need for the rest of the game. If you only collect those ammos, you never run out. Like I said, as long as you're not panicking. But a lot, like you said, a lot of the dinosaurs can be shot from a distance. There's only a couple times where you walk into a room and you're immediately getting like blindsided.
Yeah, and it's fine in that regard. Like, I actually think that's fine because I think any quick combat, not that I even think they could do it in first person there, wouldn't have been fine. And the overworld area, like, there's no real direction in the game. Like there's a computer where it'll tell you kind of where to go in a sense, like where you should be tracking next. But there's no guide markers. There's nothing modern that would allow you to know where the hell you're going. Which is part of the fun about this game, really. Is just exploring and understanding where to go.
It's funny, there's signs in the park that look like the ones from the movie, but all it is a picture and an arrow. So like there's a picture of a boat to the right, and then the boat is somewhere to the right. But they don't have words, so you don't know when they tell you to go to like the east shed or the I forgot what the southern one, maybe it's called South Shed or something like that. You don't know for sure where those exactly are or what they are. You might find one because a couple of the buildings look very similar. You're just like, well, this is in a general easterly direction. Maybe this is what they're talking about.
And I think that's, again, like that's what I think is so cool about this game is like it doesn't really tell you anything, so you're free to explore. But with that, there's some really awful problems with this game.
Yeah.
Especially if we're just looking at it from the 1993 version. So one of the biggest things, actually, I would say the biggest thing this game has in its fault is, again, going back to no passwords, no saves. This game is about 4.5 hours to finish straight through, and that's probably, I think that's about the average. But that's also assuming you know where to go, what you're doing, right? And
I don't even know if that includes collecting the eggs.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure how much how comprehensive it is. So that's straight through. You can't save. You can't turn this thing off. So Ducey, I remember you did this back in the day. Like you played straight through it probably in an afternoon. Like, right? Like you probably had lunch, you made a little day out of it. I'm sure I won't think I was over that day, I'm sure.
I'm sure I like paused, went and ate, never turned the system off.
Yeah.
Came back to it in the evening.
Because I remember you told me after you had done it. I was like, I did the whole thing in one run. Like, I had lunch, blah, blah, and I forgot how the day went. But I remember when you told me that happened because I'd borrowed it from you. And then I'm pretty certain I took the Nintendo Power, which you really need a guide for this. There's no, you can get through it, but you're going to have a freaking nightmare of a time trying to figure out where everything is and how everything works.
It's surprising how in-depth the Nintendo Power was, though. Like, I don't think there was a separate strategy guide for this.
I don't think so either.
You really can complete the whole thing based on the Nintendo Power coverage.
Yeah, and I saw that guide in this issue because, I remember seeing it at your house, and I remember the maps, and I was looking, it was like, it tells you where everything is. And you really need it for this because you also only have 3 lives in this game. Or is it 4?
4.
4 lives. And then once, I think after you continue, does it start you from where you left off? Or how does that work?
I don't remember, actually, because I don't remember having to continue too often.
Yeah, so either way, it's just this game is not designed well in that sense. Like, I really love a lot about this game, but the biggest fault is, like, if I'm looking at it from 1993... the fact that you can just, you can die, you can shut the system off, you have to do it all over again. It's a 4.5 hour game. It's not like a 1 hour beat 'em up, right? Like you turn off Turtles in Time, whatever, right?
Yeah.
This is like, all right, I got to do all that all over again. And that's why, frankly, I never beat it when I brought it from you because I couldn't carve enough time to do it. Plus, I was dying all the time.
Yeah, I know I played this a lot and didn't get very far in it, but I got good at ammo conservation and knowing how to do the first part pretty quickly. And then when I got to a certain point in the later half of the game where I was like going to the ship and going to the caves and stuff, I thought, okay, I've made it this far. I better better see it through.
Yeah, exactly. So once you're at that point, I could totally see it like, well, I'm already almost done. I may as well just get it done.
Yeah.
But that's if you get to that point. Now, with 2024 being the case, being what it is with that collection, the fact that it has save states and a map, it makes this game so much more playable than what it was if you play it like on actual hardware. Like, of course, with save states, there's also a ROM hack I've seen out there that includes a save.
Oh,
right.
Nice.
But if you have the collection, which I got it for like, I think it was like $17 on sale. Totally worth it if you're into Jurassic Park. From our era, I would say.
The only issue I'm already kind of worried about, because I've played it a little bit, and I created a save state, and then I realized if I let too much time pass, I'm not going to remember where I'm at.
Yep, I could see that.
And you definitely won't remember which eggs you've collected, and there's no pause menu with an inventory. So
yep,
you do collect ID cards in this. They're the different characters of the movie, but you don't remember whose you have and where they go.
And I think they only appear silhouettes on your visor mask, right? On left and right?
For
when you get the ID cards, or where are the icons now? Where are those?
Those are your lives.
Oh, those are live still. Oh, geez. I thought they were
like
ID
I said,
cards.
you have no idea what you already have in your inventory.
So, and that's the thing is when I look at that, I have to feel like that was probably just the result of a rush development, right? Because they probably wanted to get this out a few months after the movie, or at least as close to the movie as they could. And I just have a feeling like this game was probably just rushed. If it had like another 6 months, and also beyond the fact too is like they had to rework the graphics too, right? Between August and October,
they were more focused on that.
They were more focused on that to make the game a success. But it feels like if it had another 6 to 8 months in development, maybe they could add save or like an inventory menu, or even passwords would have been just fine,
Yeah, there's computers in this game that you have to, like, once you activate them, you kind of move your finger around as if it was a mouse and keyboard cursor.
Yeah, I got to that.
I could easily see on the main menu, you go to one of those computers and you type in a password, and now you know
that's
where
all
you're
you
at.
need. Yeah. Also, this does support the Super Nintendo mouse as well. I never got to play it back then with it.
I forgot about that.
Me too.
Yeah.
But I do remember that. I remember reading about that as well back then, and I'm sure it makes it even a little bit better. One fun little thing I read about this, I didn't know this existed, but there was the Great Dino Egg Hunt competition when this game released. It was a contest where the players had to search for 8 letters around the park. I'd be curious to see what those are, because I don't even know about this at all.
They're very. I would find them occasionally.
Really?
They're visible, but they're tiny, and they're just like they're the letters. But like my mom, I remember used to watch me play, and we would both be going around like, "What the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
Why is there just an R here? Why is there an H?"
This is why.
Yeah.
It's because the message was Dr. Horner, and apparently within like a couple days, someone guessed it, because they probably could find a few letters, and probably I don't know who is Dr. Horner. How's he related to the Jurassic Park?
He's who Alan Grant is based on.
Oh, okay, so there you go.
He's a real paleontologist.
So maybe someone just knew Horner, and connected the letters, and they ended up winning $5,000 for that, which is pretty cool. So I thought that was cool. I thought it's weird that there was a competition that we didn't know about, and now it explains why you were seeing these letters and made no freaking sense.
Yeah, I was like, I would walk over, because there's a pickup mechanic when you want to get the ammo or the eggs off the ground. You have to push a certain button, and he bends over. So I'm over there like bending over trying to pick up these letters.
That's
like,
so funny.
That's not doing anything.
Yeah. If only you knew, you might have $5,000 in your pocket. Yeah. But I guess the winner guessed it after playing the game for 10 hours. So he might have been a little bit ahead of you there, Deucey.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If he got it on launch, I know I got this for like Christmas.
That's also year. True. Yeah, because it says 2 days after it was released. So yeah, he was already ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple speed runs before we get into the Genesis version and do comparisons. 80% Classic by Shmup for Life. They beat this game in 40 minutes, 54 seconds, which is ridiculous.
That has to be without the eggs?
I don't know what that can. Well, any percent can mean like they rush through in any way. And there's any percent. They call this 1 person 2 controllers, but it's just a way of saying like with the mouse controller and a D-pad. And this person, Snowy Aria, got it in 47 minutes 46 seconds. So it took him 7 minutes longer for the Raiders was.
So if you use the mouse, you still use the D-pad for movement?
I believe that's how it works. Yeah. So the mouse probably just turns you, right, and then you have your control for the overworld segments.
Yeah.
And the D-pad for just movement, and the mouse probably just scrolls you left and right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool they added that too, but at the same time, it's like, well, I wish you just didn't add the mouse and added saves.
Yeah.
All right, do you see the Genesis version here? So this is an entirely different game. This is more of a traditional side scroller where you play as Grant. Your whole intent is to get to the visitor center and escape, or as plays the Raptor, where you're basically cornering Grant and you don't necessarily kill him. But I don't know if you do kill him in the game. Actually,
You probably could.
you probably could. Yeah, I think you do something with the visitor center. It crumbles with the T-Rex model. I don't know what the case is. This one has 3 lives and no continues, so that follows the Super Nintendo version to some extent.
Yeah.
But it at least has actually not checkpoints. At least has a password system, which I abused the hell out of when I was a kid. So I remember I got this game. I'm almost certain this was a birthday present from Vito from Blockbuster.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure he bought this used there, and he brought it over and we played it.
Awesome.
And I loved this game back then. Like I really did enjoy it, but I knew how ungodly hard it was right away. So as Grant, there's 7 areas. There's the jungle, the power station, the river, and the pumping station. I'm pretty sure I got to the river or the pumping station without codes back then.
I could get to the river without codes.
Yeah, right. I feel like
Yeah.
that after that is when the difficulty just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
But those 7 levels, no matter it's hard to get to no matter what because this game is just ungodly hard. The Raptor has 5 levels. And then, with the Raptor, one cool mechanic he has is that you can eat the little compies to refill your health because he eats meat.
Yeah.
And otherwise, he's just killing guards and he fights Grant at the visitor center. Weapons in here, when you're playing as Grant, they're mostly non-lethal and they stun enemies. So you have these darts that kill most of the smaller enemies in one hit. It just knocks them out. The red darts are more potent and they can even take down a T-Rex, but I guess it takes more for a Triceratops because that makes sense. I don't know. I feel like T-Rex should have been the biggest thing to kill,
Yeah.
There's a stun gun, and you have different sets of grenades. There's a gas grenade, flash, concussion, and there's also rockets, which is the most powerful weapon in the game. This game is freaking hard, Ducey, as I've mentioned before. So as much as I enjoyed it back then, there's a lot I don't like about this game in 2024.
Yeah, like I said, I could get to the river. I remember getting to the river fairly easily, and then that gets difficult because you have the raft, which is a little harder to control, and then you have to keep getting the gas for it. Mm-hmm. This time, though, now that I played it in the collection, I couldn't get past the first level.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. So the thing I totally forgot about was the how slow the game could be. There's a lot of slowdown, even for a Genesis game, which is surprising because Genesis games, most of them, especially by 93, they're on the blast processing gimmick. A lot of them ran really fast. You look at Gunstar Heroes, Contra Hardcore, they're 100 miles an hour and they don't slow down.
Yeah.
So it's surprising. Granted, the graphics in here are really good and the fidelity is really nice, but it runs really slow. Even the scrolling speed's kind of awkward. Everything just hits really hard. Grant, he's weird. He's slippery too. That's the other thing. I was a little bit of a struggle.
Right off the bat, you're in this overturned Jeep. You crashed, and you want to go and get. There's a couple ammo things right by the Jeep, but if you're too slow, a Triceratops comes out of nowhere immediately.
He's right. Not even a screen over. He's on the same screen with you.
I was like, hold your horses, fella. I'm trying to just start the game.
And I think it's actually cool because I do like the music in this game. It's Genesis, right? So it sounds kind of chunky and bassy, but maybe because of my nostalgia for it, I do think the music's really good. I think the cutscenes are really nice for what they are, right?
Yeah.
They kind of follow the movie. Even in the beginning cutscene, you have the rainy streets or in the park with the Jeep, and then the T-Rex.
You see the T-Rex head.
Yeah,
sort of
just
float
pans
in.
in the view.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hello there. So it's really cool. I would say one great thing both these games do is they excel at making the license first and foremost, and taking every liberty they could with it, and really making it feel like it was part of the movie.
It's funny that they could include that with the game, and it came out before the Super Nintendo version, and you'd think that they only had the same stuff to work on that Super Nintendo had. Maybe not a fully finished movie or anything yet.
Well, that's what I'm curious because, they did use the Velociraptor model in the game for this. So I'm curious what resources were passed on. Maybe it was something the Super Nintendo team at Ocean has it, so we can't use that yet. We have to wait for them to be done with it. Maybe they made copies. I have no idea, but it's interesting how, they both have 2 drastically different art styles. This is definitely more on the realistic side. And the Super Nintendo one looks more like a Super Nintendo game, with bright, vibrant colors and that sort of style that Super Nintendo's known for.
Yeah.
This feels like a gritty Genesis game, it should, Blue Sky does.
You feel lost in a jungle.
You do, and it works really well when it works. But like we mentioned, after level 3, which is the river, which the river level is pretty hard because you're on a raft and you have to collect these little gas cans to keep the raft going. And it's a bit of a maze. There's also enemies you're trying to fend off of you, like the pterodactyls are a nightmare to deal with.
And the T-Rex pops up.
And a T-Rex pops up. And it's almost like an obstacle course in that sense, like an auto-scroller. And then after that, at the pumping station, which is the level I'm pretty sure I got to legitimately back then, but I could never beat it. Because once you're out of lives, like you basically have to rely on passwords to get through. But the pumping station is more of like a labyrinth almost, like a lot of ladders up and down.
Same with the second level, the power station.
Yeah.
Like all the indoor aspects to it were very maze-like. It reminded me of that X-Men Game Gear game.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. Yeah.
It's like, and it's just in general, that was the way a lot of games were back in the day. You definitely needed a magazine that showed you like pinpoint accuracy where these maps were.
Yeah, because there's a lot of like you'll go up, then right, then down, left, down, left. Yeah. Like it was almost like an artificial way to lengthen the level, which I kind of hate. And I really feel like that's what is one of the biggest faults about this game is like the levels. There's a typical amount of levels, right? There's 7 for Grant, 5 for the Raptor. And they're both just kind of unnecessarily long because if they weren't that long, the game would be even shorter than it is if you can get through it. The Raptor, he's fun because he plays, obviously drastically different. Like he can eat little enemies, he can claw at like the guards and whatnot.
Yeah,
he has like a super high jump that's really nice to traverse the areas.
You can do a long jump with your feet out, like as you're attacking.
Yeah, and his character and his sprite looks really really good.
Yeah,
it's probably the best thing in this game as far as graphics outside the effects it has and everything. And one cool thing I thought with the cheat mode was that it's the cheat password for this is Nyuk Nyuk, which is a very Three Stooges thing to do. And also there's also a password for all weapons and ammo maxed. It's Wagner93. The only thing I could find on Wagner is Richard Wagner, which is a Roman era composer who inspired John Williams. That's the only connection I could find in this, but I thought that was cool that they at least had cheats because that's how I beat this game. Like I did level select, I got to the visitor center, and you fight the T-Rex with the T-Rex model, and you have to like do something with like the base of its foot or something, and then the T-Rex model crumbles, and it like either kills the T-Rex or forces it to run away or something. Or no, it's the Raptors you fight. I think
it's the Raptors. Yeah, and because I was watching the speed runs, and like you throw the grenades at a certain way.
That's
and then
right.
The pieces fall on the Raptors.
Yeah, I do remember that like the ribs would fall off and the head.
Which I didn't understand. Like I've just gone through 7 levels of shooting Raptors, and now I have to throw bones at them.
It feels like I want to say I might have had the thought when I was a kid because it's like it doesn't make sense. Like why are basically every dinosaur pushed over with the right darts early in the game?
Yeah.
And now you're forcing me this goofy boss fight to fend off raptors with a T-Rex skeleton.
Yeah.
It's really weird. And it's like, again, maybe it's a product of just a rush development. Like this came out previous to the Super Nintendo version. So this is the best they could do. And granted, they did a lot with it. I think it just ages poorly now. Right? It's like between the two versions, like, I don't know, I guess graphics, I'd have to give it to the Super Nintendo.
Yeah. Graphics, I would give it to Super Nintendo, but environments, I would probably give it to Sega because
there's a lot more detail with theirs.
When you get into the visitor center, it really feels like the movie. It feels like you're in the visitor center. You can do the visitor center in Super Nintendo, but it just feels like kind of a very barren hotel.
Yeah, that's true. It does. And it's also, the first person perspective, as cool as it is, it's not ideal. And like, if you go into the visitor center, like you want to see visitor center stuff. You don't want to see these generic repatterned walls.
It was like blue walls or something.
Yeah. Cause again, like they couldn't have that many colors in each of these first person segments. There was no super effects chip. So they're as basic as can be for a first person perspective on Super Nintendo.
When you go into like utility sheds and things, the walls are pretty detailed with like metal and rivets and piping, but it's also very repetitive. Mm-hmm. Like, you can see the same chunk repeated over and over.
Which is also what leads you to get lost.
Yeah.
Every corner looks the same because what I caught myself doing is like I would go into like a room and then I wouldn't turn all the way around because it was almost like a J shape.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's a door on that J point, but I would just go across like an L.
Oh, and then stop.
And stop like, oh, well, I guess I'm lost. Nothing here. And it turns out there's a door behind me that I didn't see, But overall, I think like, the Genesis version probably has more detail for the most part. But I'd say as far as like, the actual aesthetic and how things look and play, probably more on the Super Nintendo side, I would say.
Yep.
Back then, I would have said the Sega version because it was more playable.
Well, it's so funny because I think I've mentioned this before, but like Aladdin and Jurassic Park were the 2 reasons I was jealous of somebody having a Sega. For the most part, I didn't care. Like Sonic looked fun, but I played that a lot at friends' houses and stuff. But those other two, like when you had them, I was like, oh, those were the only two things I really wanted to hook up the Genesis for. I wanted to play those two. But yeah, now I play it and I'm like, oh, thank God I grew up with the Super.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt when I revisited both of these on that collection. Like I didn't know what to expect from the Super Nintendo version because I hadn't played it in literally decades. And I had a little bit of expectation for the Genesis one, but I also fully realized like how much it didn't age from 1993, right? Like, it was a lot of the flaws stick out way more now. Like just the control is really stiff. Like I said, I got kind of tired of the slipperiness at times. Like there's points with Grant where like you're sliding down like this jungle thing, and if you're not careful, like the momentum will carry you off a platform. Like, and I'm like, why is that there? Yeah. Like there's just too many blind jumps.
That was my big issue with this replay is like I get to a certain ledge and I'm like, where do they want me to go?
Yeah.
Straight down?
Yeah.
Off to the right a little? Like, I don't know. It's like a lot of trial and error.
Exactly. And that's kind of things that like I don't have as much patience for. But then I look at the Super Nintendo one, right, where I've talked about its ambition. Like that game feels like a game that wouldn't have been on Super Nintendo at the time, but it was. And I think now, like with the save states, that's how you should play this game.
Yeah.
Go back and play it now with the save states because it just makes it way more enjoyable. It takes out a lot of the annoyingness of the fact that after you're out of lives, you have to restart the game pretty much, Also, I didn't get to mention speed runs for the Genesis version. Let's go with those real quick before we wrap up. Because these are... So I put the YouTube links. So when I put notes together, I usually just mention the speed runs. And then for these, like the times were so slow or so low that I figured Ducey would be like, what the hell, 5 minutes? Where is this, So I put links, but this game actually is very short if you just rush through it and know what to do.
Oh, that second part is the key. Know what to do.
Know what to do, absolutely.
And have confidence that the supposed random...
artificial dinosaur intelligence.
That won't kick in because apparently it doesn't. Like the guy I actually watched two runs because like the link you sent wasn't the exact one.
Yeah, I was in the most current one.
But then I found the current one below it and I watched both of his runs exactly the same. The dinosaurs were coming at him exactly the same. He was tossing grenades or shooting before he knew.
That's so funny.
Because he knew the dinosaurs would be there.
Yeah.
And so that randomness was definitely not random, but also I don't know, like that takes a lot of work.
A lot of memorization, a lot of familiar with the game, because also
there's glitches.
There's glitches. I think there's a lot where we can skip. Like I remember he scrolled through like one level with like a ladder or something like that.
Yeah, there was this weird like ladder climb, and all of a sudden he was climbing in midair and then going up diagonally to the right.
Yeah,
floating.
It's really crazy. But also like again with speedrunners, like it's one thing to learn the game how to speed through it, but also with this game you're dealing with slippery controls, and that's with any speedrun game with any controls like that, right? Like you're contesting with the controls in addition to everything else that the game is throwing at you.
Yeah.
So Retro Brando, he has the record for both the any % Grant and any % Raptor. So any % Grant, he's able to finish this game in 5 minutes and 8 seconds. I don't think I could get through a quarter of level 1 in 5 minutes and 8 seconds.
I think that Triceratops stomps on me enough that 5 minutes pass.
It might be done, yeah. And then the Raptor mode, he gets through in 2 minutes and 42 seconds. He's just jumping through everything. Like he's not fighting anything. He knows exactly where to go, which is a big piece of the game.
Yeah.
And the Raptor's, increased height and everything else, and like he has a pretty strong attack with his claw. He just mows through everything or just jumps over and avoids everything. So that tells you a lot there. It's like, if these games could be completed in under 10 minutes, if you're speedrunning, if you know them well enough, like it's not that long of a game. But then if you play it like a normal person would, it's kind of artificially long and artificially challenging because it's just throwing random crap at you.
Yeah.
The levels are just made to purposely be confusing and just, it's just everything built against you to make this game longer than it needs to be.
It's a typical game, but I think because it was probably rushed as much as Super Nintendo,
easily,
they couldn't get rid of all those glitches.
Yeah. And also, relative to other movie-based games, it's really good.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's like an awful game, but I'm speaking more of like my rants, more of like a 2024 perspective. Like I haven't played this in 25 years, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like at the time, like both of these were fantastic movie-based games. Do you see any final thoughts on these two before we get into anything further?
It's funny. This one final thought came to me. It's sort of a comparison of like what I was talking about the NES World Championships and how people have been reviewing it on YouTube. and one guy was saying like, "Oh, some of these challenges in the Nintendo thing could be Metroid, could be Mario." He goes, "You're just holding right and you're jumping," and he said that as if it was a downside to the World Championships game, and then I wanted to just be like that Will Smith meme where he's like holding out his arms.
Yeah.
You're like, look at every speed run ever, especially this one on Sega.
Yeah. He's
The
literally
guy
holding right the entire time.
went right, jumped like precisely, and then found glitches and still continued to hold right.
Yeah.
Like, hey, buddy, shut up.
That's why it's rough. Like, there's people who online who just complain to complain, and it's always like nitpicky stuff. And also, I nitpick too, but I don't. No one cares what I say. I don't have like a billion followers on YouTube or something that say like, yeah, he's right about holding right in A, whatever, you know. But it's like you can find that in anything. Like this, like yeah, I'm holding right for 2 minutes. When this game, like realistically as a kid, it should last hours, right?
Yeah. We had hours of fun and we never beat them.
Yeah, exactly. Like we saw funds for this game. We saw half the levels unless we were using cheats. But yeah, overall, I would say yours is the easy pick, right? You have to go with the Super Nintendo version.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. In fact, I'll play it again, hopefully all the way through, thanks to this collection.
I'd like to. Yeah, it's a totally, like I said, that save state changes everything with that game. It makes a huge difference.
I definitely recommend getting the collection because it also has on it a very little known game. There was a Jurassic Park 2.
Yeah,
on
for Super Nintendo.
And it's not based on The Lost World, the movie. This one was sort of like before they even knew there was going to be a Lost World. This was a continuation of the story. I kind of liked it as like sort of a canon type story event where the company that had hired Nedry to, sneak the stuff off, they were more involved in this second game and they were just directly assaulting the island. Mm-hmm. And then for some reason they hired the Alan Grant, to like put on this bulletproof vest, give him a machine gun, and just go mow down that other company.
Yeah, and this is the one where it had that where you could scroll through levels like you would go through, and there's like a path where you hit up or down, right?
Yeah.
It's like a side scroller, but you can still go up or down on the path. But then some bushes were blocking the arrows that tell you to go up or down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And you could choose your level, and each like there was the pterodactyl, what do you call it? The aviary. There was the T-Rex escape where you're on the back of a Jeep and the T-Rex is constantly chasing you. Mm-hmm. All the graphics in that game looked great. It looked like a return to Jurassic Park. Like the area was run down because everybody abandoned it, but there are still dinosaurs on the loose. And it's very much a side scroller like the Sega version, but very quicker and more of a shoot 'em up.
Yeah, it's I only played a little bit, like on the emulator. I didn't even play on the collection yet. But that's very much the case. It just plays better too, but it's also newer, of course.
Yeah.
And they probably had more liberties and more time to develop that thing too. But yeah, the collection also has the NES version, Game Boy, right?
Yep.
Jurassic Park Rampage Edition, which is like, we thought it was almost like an expansion because it's called Rampage Edition, but it's really just like an entirely new game where you play as the Raptor. I think Grant as well, or is it only the Raptor?
No, you play as Grant too.
Okay.
And that one it's kind of like Jurassic Park 2. It's quicker, it's more of a shooter, and it's also harder than every other game on that collection.
Yeah, and
you die quick.
Well, and that's exactly. I figured that was the case because I think I might have rented it back then because I saw it in magazines, but I was like, I really thought it was just like the one I had, so I was like, well, I don't want a newer version of that. Like, I'll buy Super Street Fighter 2, but not Rampage Edition, And then the one I wish they had added was the Game Gear one. I'm actually shocked that that's not on there for whatever reason. I don't know how that version didn't get on the collection, but it should be because, like I said, it's one of the better versions. I'd say it's like Super Nintendo is probably my new favorite because of how cool it is and like the ambition of it and how good it looks and how the save state saves the games.
Yeah.
But then there's also the Game Gear version, probably second, and I probably would put the Genesis one after that because I can't really place Jurassic Park 2 or Rampage Edition, and I've never played the Game Boy or Nintendo ones on there.
The Nintendo one is fun. It's like all of the outdoor areas of Super, but you never go. When you go inside, it's not first person. Mm-hmm. It's still sort of top down. Your bullets are huge. Like,
of course,
when you miss,
huge.
Yeah, when you miss, it's your fault. Like, I gotta play it again. I did play it once I got the collection, but I still haven't gotten to the T-Rex again. So I'm waiting to see if I'm misremembering it or if it really is as a pain in the ass as I remember.
Well, at least you get saved before it happens.
Yeah, just constantly reload.
All right, do you see any final words about Jurassic Park before you want to skedaddle today?
Just definitely get that collection. It actually surprised me because I thought the collection was only the Sega, Super, and maybe Rampage edition.
It feels like it initially started that way, and I felt like they added it, like, not after the fact, but they eventually said, like, okay, we're adding the other games too. Yeah.
Which means maybe as DLC they can add the Game Gear.
I would love for them. I would actually pay an extra few bucks for that.
Jurassic Park just has a fun legacy of games, like from the really bad, like Trespasser, to the modern ones of like building a Dino Park simulator.
Those are really cool. Jurassic
Evolution.
World. Evolution, excuse me. Yes.
Jurassic World Evolution and Evolution 2, which I haven't played yet. But those are really fun. And I was trying to think of, like, other than Trespasser, which was just ahead of its time, I can't think of bad Jurassic Park games.
I can't really think. Well, there hasn't been many. I know Jurassic Park Lost World on PS1 wasn't so great.
Oh, okay.
But again, like, you know, a lot of movie-based games weren't great that time.
What was that one where the dinosaurs were fighting? It was a fighter.
Oh, yeah.
Was that also Lost World something?
It might have been some Lost World game like that. I totally forgot there was a dinosaur fighter like that. You're right. It might have been Lost World something. Yeah. So, but again, like, they're not... It has some bad games, but you probably weren't playing them anyway. You know, like, you probably could find worse. But for me, like, the legacy has always been the original movie, more so than Lost World, as much as I enjoyed that movie.
Yeah.
And everything, you know, all the tie-in stuff it had. But, you know, a lot of these games, they're perfectly fine and playable. They're, you know, I would say in a lot of ways great, like the Super Nintendo one and Game Gear.
Like I said, this collection, though, it got the important ones right.
It did, yeah. So that's a great way to play them, really, because if you're going to play on original hardware, you're going to have a hard time and a bad time, probably. But the collection just makes it so much easier. Like, I cannot overstate how much save states save some of these games. Like, the Super Nintendo one needed this.
Yes.
That's like my biggest negative for the game. It has like other nitpicks, but it needed passwords and saves, and this collection rectifies all of that. But if you have any Jurassic Park memories, please let us know. You can email us at legiongamingpod@gmail.com. And of course, we're on Instagram at Legion Gaming Podcasts. Ducey, any final words for our friends off in Jurassic Park?
These are not big piles of shit.